Oh, that's cool.
Steve, how are you?
Great. How are you guys?
Good. Just want to let you know and just remind everybody this meeting is recorded.
You keep telling us that, Pat. Are you concerned?
I guess we'll wait till 8 o'clock to start. Is everybody that we need on the meeting? I guess if you're not here, speak up, right? One of those?
Looks like you have a quorum.
No, we wait till 8 o'clock.
Steve, would you like Melissa to take a roll call for you?
Good morning, all.
Who the heck was that?
Your neighbor.
Oh,
Oh,
God.
Janksy.
I see you enough. I've been quarantined from you.
God, I can imagine the happy hours on that driveway.
Let's just say recycling's up, Jim.
Recycling's up.
Hey, Bill, I'm going to the shore tomorrow. Do you need a case or 6 doers?
Absolutely. You can never run out.
Safety first.
All right, we're getting close. Sorry.
You guys look cute in the morning. Morning, everyone.
Morning.
You guys hear me?
Yes.
Great. Clear. All right. Yeah, I have no. I don't think you guys can see me on the.
Okay. Well,
Where your mask at?
it's 8 o'clock. I believe everybody that we need to have on the meeting is on the meeting. Public has a chance to attend at this point. Quick point of order. Well, first of all, let's call the meeting to order. This meeting is being taped or recorded. Public is invited. If we need to go to a executive session, we will do so. We will, prior to leaving this meeting, we will announce what time we will come back to the public so that you can log back in and don't have to sit there and wait until wonder what time to log back in. So we will announce a time that we would come back. Chris and Bethany, anything else we need to say about the statements for virtual meeting? This is my first one.
No, I don't think so. I think that's sufficient.
I think we've recently started adding to virtual meetings that any public participation is a, consent to use their likeness and voice in the recording.
Okay, consider that now stated. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Good point. Good point.
Okay. Is there any public comment?
You hear me? No. No. Who else is there?
No public comment?
Nope.
Okay. Anybody else out there for public comment? Okay, then I guess we're on to the audit review.
I'm Nick Bieber with Turbine and Company to go through this. I do have a copy on my PowerPoint if you want me to share so I can click through the slides rather than scrolling through. Either way is fine with me.
Well, if you can control it, why don't you do it?
All right, so in order to do that, whoever is sharing this screen now would have to pause that share, and then I can go in and share.
Okay, let's not do that. I have a feeling we're gonna have people with issues with that. Is that a fair statement, anybody? Yes, no? Should we just scroll, folks?
Let's just scroll.
Okay, let's scroll. I'm sorry, Nick.
Okay.
So who's in? Melissa, you're in the meeting. Start scrolling.
Okay. There you go.
All right, so here's just a brief overview of what we'll be going through today, rather than the traditional sense of through the full financial statement.
Otherwise, just press pound to continue.
I pulled out some of the key pages and some trend information to go through.
Please enter that you have not entered any numbers. Please re-enter the meeting password followed by pound.
Hold on, Nick, hold on a second. Sorry,
Okay.
whoever's using the second tool of devices, please put that on mute. Go ahead.
All right. You can go to the next slide. This just goes over our general responsibility as auditors. Our responsibility is to opine on whether the financial statements are fairly presented. These are in conformity with the modified cash basis accounting, which is in compliance with ECE requirements. Go to the next slide. This just indicates that we did have an unmodified opinion with the audit, which is the highest level, a clean opinion that can be issued. This is a statement that's actually within the financial statement, the general fund budget to actual report. It's going to hit on a couple of the key variances. Overall, your total revenues for the 2019 year were $178,000 over budget. Some of the larger variance items that you'll see above are earned income taxes. This was $580,000 under budget. The budget was high due to a one-time receipt that came in during the 2018 year that at the time wasn't known being a one-time receipt. So that was about $500,000, which accounts for most of this variance. On the intergovernmental revenue side, that was $300,000 over. That's from the Green Light Go grant that was received, but that was not budgeted for. Charges for services, $158,000 over budget. This relates to revenues primarily from building permits, which when we get to the expenditure side, you'll see the corresponding budget overage in the expenses. If you keep scrolling down, I'm only seeing a portion of the page, so I assume that you guys are all seeing the same. But here you'll see overall expenditures are $592,000 over budget, which is about 4.6%. The key items here were the additional cost that was unexpected for the fire truck, which was initially purchased in 2018 year. I mentioned before about the public safety other being over due to the building permit costs where you had the corresponding revenue. Then community development was about $113,000 over. This has to do with the economic development that was going on at the VF outlet area. Some corresponding contributions came in with the other revenue line item from contributions from third parties to cover some of those expenses. And then lastly, on the expenditures side, you had the employer paid benefits insurance was $300,000 over. The board had approved early on in the 2019 year to put an additional $530,000 into the pension plans. That's why that was over budget. In total, the borough had budgeted for a use of fund balance of about $1.4 million during the 2019 year. Actual use of fund balance you'll see is the $1,774,000. Any questions there before we move on?
Nope.
Well, if not, we can just move on to the next slide. There's a brief summary of your special revenue funds. Street maintenance tax had a surplus of $9,000, resulting in an ending fund balance at December 31st of $35,000. And your state highway aid had a surplus of $6,000 for the year with an ending fund balance of $193,000.
Okay.
This next slide is just a general summary of your 5-year trend in your ending fund balance. The big thing that stands out here is the use of fund balance in the general fund during the 2019 year. As I mentioned before, there was $1.8 million use of fund balance. This brought the ending fund balance down to $1,244,000, which represents just about 1 month of your budgeted expenditures for the 2020 year. Additionally, the 2020 year had a use of fund balance budgeted of using $633,000. So this fund balance in your general fund is getting on the low side. Most municipalities that we see have an ending fund balance somewhere around 2 to 6 months. So this is just something to keep track of, look at your cash flows. And on the other side is that if the borough doesn't have a minimum fund balance policy, that's something to consider putting in place so that you have a policy in place identifying that this is the minimum amount that we want to bring fund balance down to and control spending and your budget plan utilizing that. On your proprietary fund side, that was still on the above slide, sorry. Water and sewer revenues, you'll see water and refuse revenues had slight increases in net position for the year. The sewer fund had a use of about $250,000 in net position, which is primarily due to capital repairs. Those ending fund balances are still at healthy levels. Now you can move on. Just overall, during our in-person presentation, I would go over and hand out a couple letters. So just to touch on briefly virtually, and then I'll send PDF copies of these letters over to Phyllis that she can share. But just keep in mind that you do have a small office staff and your segregation of duties as best you can are in place. But we just want to remind, due to the small staff size, the responsibilities for oversight from the Borough Council are of utmost importance. We had no issues during the audit, no proposed audit entries, and no upcoming pronouncements that we need to bring to your attention. The last couple slides are just a little bit about Herb Bynum Company and the audit team. But if you have any questions on the last slide, you can reach out to any one of us. Or if you have any questions now, I'd be happy to take them.
I got a question.
Yes.
How do we stand on our pension versus your other clients?
Looking at the most recent valuation reports, you're at an overall good position. I think you're around, for each of the 3 pension funds, over 80%, closer to 90% funded on average. So, and you've been doing this in, this 2019 wasn't the first year that you put in additional funding into your pensions in the past, and that has helped build your pension funds to a well-funded position. And that's where a lot of the use of the fund balance in the past couple of years had come from.
Thank you.
It was before the crash.
Yeah, who knows what it's at now, but not nearly as good as it was 12/31/19.
I thought our fund balance was at $7.5 million. Is that incorrect?
You might be looking at overall within all the funds.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Any other questions for Nick?
I don't think so. Good job, Nick. Good job, fellas.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
All right. Thanks, Nick.
All right.
Enjoy your day.
Thank you. You guys too.
Okay. Phyllis, you're up on cash update.
Okay, cash balances at the end of March were just over $7 million. That's up slightly since February, which reflects the start of the real estate tax collections. What we learned at the end of March when I was getting the information together for presentation was that the rates dropped significantly in the last week of the month. So at the end of March, there was still $6 million sitting in the ICS investment account. When I learned that the rate fell below what it was at the local VIST branch, the entire $6 million, with the exception of $1,000 to keep the account open, was moved back to the local VIST branch. Rates still aren't great, but we had to move the money where the rate was higher. So they will keep me informed as rates change. Okay. Results for the end of March. As I stated before, we started collecting real estate taxes. So the deficit at the end of February, that was 1.2 million, is reduced to a deficit of just 300,000. The details of which will be in your council package that I believe Melissa plans on distributing today. We were looking at updates of capital projects to keep the committee informed of where we stand versus our bids and our budgets. The only bid thus far has been for the street work, and that has not yet been awarded, as I think all those projects are on pause. I'll let Pat comment further on that. So the only disbursements to date have been payment of retainage from 2019. The only exception to that is that we have received 2 counter invoices to begin the work on phase 2 of the Borough Hall window project. All other disbursements have been for retainage from 19.
We can talk about the projects next.
Okay.
Let's just move through this.
Okay. Do you want to talk about mercantile tax or projects?
Let's go to the mercantile tax.
Okay. What you see in front of you is a summary of the 2019 collections. So mercantile tax, we collected 1,186,000, just a few thousands over what we had budgeted. Of that amount, 85% of it was collected in the Wilson area, 15% collected in the Wyomissing area. And the reason this is a topic is that we have been asked to extend the due date of the tax returns that would otherwise be due on April 15th. A resolution is, I guess, set for approval with the next council meeting to extend that deadline. And then we heard from Wilson asking us to consider reducing the percentage that would be applied to the 2020 estimates that are being paid. So basically, the revenue we receive is a balance due from 2019 and a 100% estimate of what is anticipated for 2020. If we were to follow through on their request, we would essentially cut our revenue in half because most of what we were receiving are the 2020 estimates. So that's what's currently under consideration. Steve, do you want to comment further?
So to be clear, what we're talking about is reducing our, what we thought was a $1.225 million of revenue, basically in half.
Yes.
And if we kept it at 100%, Phyllis, just correct me if I'm wrong. If we kept it at 100%, and obviously the estimates would be overstated, next year we'd be in a position where we'd be reimbursing some of these, that potentially that $600,000 if it came out to be exactly 50%. Is that a fair statement?
There would be reimbursements. We wouldn't be issuing them, as the Berks EIT Bureau and the Wilson School District actually does that administration. So we would not be tasked with issuing refunds. However, the administrators would be required to issue refunds potentially.
But in 2021, our net results would be affected because they'd be
Yes.
reimbursed. Okay.
Yes, they would be processing refunds, and that would be reflected in their remittance to us.
So then the question then becomes, if we're going to accept the 50%, we're looking at a deficit that we're going to have to be making up at this, just on this note, of $613,000.
Potentially.
Okay.
Who knows what the business gross receipts will be? Some businesses are making a killing at this time. Others are suffering tremendously.
I will tell you, though, it is my opinion, and it's only one person on this committee's opinion, but it's my opinion that we should probably take that more along the lines of what we need to follow through with. And if we're surprised positively, we'll all be happy with that. That's just that's just one person's opinion, though. Anybody else have a comment on that part?
I think your point's well taken, Steve.
Yeah, I would moderate it too.
Can I ask a question? The May, what comes in May for the large amount? Is a May the trigger of some annual?
Yes. The due date for these returns is April 15th. Until the Burke CIT processes most of these payments and Wilson School District processes the large volume that they receive, that's when the money actually is remitted to the borough. So that large receipt is triggered by the April 15th due date. That due date is now July 15th. So the timing of that payment will be pushed out significantly.
And there's no way of knowing what the actual is throughout the year. You're just basically going on estimates.
We are at the mercy of the administrators. What they collect and process is what the borough receives. We have no control over that.
And you have no way of gauging it until next year.
That's correct. We have no way of gauging what this year's receipts would be. Last year, we budget fairly accurately. That was based on historic trends and educated guesses.
Yeah, Keith, if you look at 19, we budgeted 1.18 million. Looked like we were off by $6,617. So relatively accurate back in 19.
Well, it sure sounds like you have no choice but to go with their recommendation of reducing it in half, and then we better look for some major spending cuts and or hold on projects until we know where we are.
Totally agree, but I think we'll get to the projects in a second. But yes, I think it's important for everybody to get a view of what we're dealing with first, and then we talk about the specific projects.
Hey, Steve, can I just chime in that I think the ask from the school districts was not a specific 50%. They're considering this as well, and I think they're open to other percentages, was the last we heard. So if this committee is open to a reduction, it could be in an amount, not 50%. You could reduce it by, make a recommendation to talk about like a 25% reduction.
Agreed. I guess, are we making a recommendation to council for the upcoming meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
But we're also waiting to hear back from the Wilson School District as well as the Wyomissing School District. The Wyomissing board, I believe, met Tuesday evening, and we have not been updated by Mark Boyer yet. Wilson was the one that actually originated this request.
Because it's a blow to our budget, significant blow to our, it's a huge blow to their budget. Where do we, if we make a recommendation today to council to go to 50%, Bethany, and it turns out that the schools, let's say they do 75% just for conversation purposes, what are the ramifications of that?
Council makes the final decision on this. And so there's some, you can make that adjustment at council meeting if you want to align with the school districts. It's certainly better for the borough to align with both districts in terms of tax treatment of your taxpayers so that they are all treated the same way. But I think, talking about it here now and getting an idea of what the ramifications would be if you were to allow a 50% versus just do a 75% advance payment, for you to understand that, for council to be able to make that decision next week, or keep it the same.
Okay.
The rate doesn't have to be consistent with the school district. You can have a different rate than the school district for this payment.
But it must be consistent for the entire borough.
Right. Within the geographic boundaries of the borough, it has to be the same. But the rate that the schools collect for their prepayment is not required to be the same for the borough.
So then the question I would have, and please don't let me dominate this conversation, is if we make a recommendation to adjust to 50%, and let's say both the Wilson School District and the Wyomissing School District settle on 75% or some number thereof, would it make sense for us to make a motion that if both school districts that are within the borough's boundaries come up with same number, that we will agree to that. And then separately, we as a group can turn around and budget based on the numbers we're seeing in front of us at 50% to be safe.
That's true. And if the school districts come up with different rates, then you're going to have to pick one of those or a different rate for the borough.
So if Wilson came up with 75 and Wyomissing came up with 70, my assumption, and again, I don't want to speak for the group, my assumption would be that we would probably go with the lower of the two.
That's up to you.
Group, what do you feel?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
We're not talking about reduction of the rate of the actual mercantile tax.
No,
We're talking about a reduction in the prepayment.
That's right. That's correct.
The estimates.
Exactly. Exactly.
And the reason to do that is because business is going to be way off, and so people aren't going to want to pay based on last year's assumptions. Is that what we're talking about?
Correct.
That's
The
right.
tax due now is an estimate of based off of 2019 for what they're doing 2020, and then it all gets reconciled every year backwards. So they're making prepayments.
Right. Are there penalties for not making the prepayment?
Yes.
Is it, do businesses sometimes not make the prepayment based on knowledge of what their business is going to be?
I don't think we can answer that. I would.
Isn't part of the question though that we're discussing that I think the government's going to say there will be no penalties?
I don't know.
Yeah.
What I'm getting at is whether we reduce this percentage of prepayment or not, a lot of businesses might just not pay it and take the penalty.
Correct.
There's a huge decline on this revenue line.
That's why we're talking about, in effect, reducing our expenses, just based on this page of $613,020.
So I think that the trick is to figure out how to dovetail. I think all the entities are going to be interested in a reduction. How do we have a powwow and discuss the percentage as opposed to guessing at it?
Well, aren't we kind of governed by what the school districts do, Bethany?
You can change, you can set the percentage for, throughout the Wyomissing borough portion of both school districts in terms of what they are prepaying. You cannot change the percentage that they are charged, their tax rate, but you can go ahead and change their prepayment, and for what you feel is best for the business entities within Wyomissing borough. It would ease an administration of this tax a great deal if it was all the same. There's no doubt about that. But you have essentially, farmed that out to Wilson School District and Berks EIT, and they will deal with whatever the 2020 prepayments are due come July 1st.
So could we make a decision to vote on up to a certain percentage?
Yes.
And then allow them to take their votes and decide what they will?
Yes. You can make a recommendation today. You're going to probably get more information about what the school districts are doing between now and council meeting. And then at council, you can make your final decision on what reduction the borough wants to allow, if any.
I second John Gallen's motion.
Not sure what that one motion was, but okay.
I would say if we pick if we want to say 50%, I say up to 50%. If the schools come in and say we're going to do a 75%, we'll say okay. As opposed to having to come back and I don't know if we had
John, yeah, I was trying to avoid coming back together too. So to be clear, when you're saying 75%, you're saying a 25% reduction, just to be clear.
Well, I would say up to 50 if that was what the recommendation was. I didn't know where we were starting.
Fine. I just want to make sure we're talking about 25% reduction, not a total.
Right. 25 to 50% reduction, it sounds like is what was being thrown around.
That's right.
In essence, what we're going to do is align ourselves with the school district. Is that correct?
Right.
We're going to align ourselves with the school district, I would assume, but we could budget however we want to.
You know, from the other side of this, from a business side of this, I'm not sure that if I was on the other end of this, I don't know that I'd want to be paying 50% less than I did last year and then find out that I went through 2 or 3 months tough spot and my business is back maybe 90% of where it was last year. And now next year I'm going to have a large tax bill. Is that the way I'm looking at this thing correctly?
Somebody?
Always rather pay my tax later than sooner.
Yeah, but I also hate surprises.
Why make a prepayment when you don't have to? And if you know personally that your business is off by a certain percentage, do you still make estimates?
I just don't know if you can base what your business, anybody's business, is going to be based on the past 30 days.
Off. It's going to be off.
Sure, it's going to be off. I don't think it's going to be off 50%, but.
That's right. I mean, there are businesses that are impacted to the extremes,
Right.
and there are some that won't be impacted at the end of the year. You know, there's going to be such a range. So what you're doing right now, if you entertain a reduction in the prepayment, you're really helping, the businesses that are struggling, and the ones that are doing well are going to continue to do well, and that they may have an additional tax burden next year.
Right. So to Keith's point is next year they would have their estimates plus some because they would be way underfunded for this year.
Right.
That's right.
All right. Well,
the
then
tax-free loan.
Do we want to entertain them? Well, I guess we already entertained a motion to align ourselves with the school districts up to a certain percentage. Is that a fair statement?
Yes. Was there any guidance, Bethany, from either of the districts what they were contemplating?
They have contemplated, in line with what you're suggesting, John, up to a 50% reduction in the 2020 estimates. It may be less, but we're waiting to hear back from them and their meetings late last night. We don't have that information yet. So you will have that before a council meeting next week.
And I assume time is of the issue, of the essence at this point.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
I thought I did.
Oh, yeah, Paul did.
Okay. I guess we need to do a roll call.
I would, Steve.
Okay.
Can we do one thing before we do it? Can we just restate what we're voting on? So we're basically voting on, we're going to agree to what the schools agree to, up to a 50% reduction
in the prepayment.
In the prepayment, right? Is that fair, John?
Yes.
Okay. Melissa?
All right. Keith Durr,
Yes.
Tom Mole,
Yes.
Paul Brass,
Yes.
John Gallen Jr.,
Yes.
Stephen Brunner,
Yes.
and then Greg, I have you too, but you're a non-voting member.
Well, didn't I switch with Paul on that, Tom?
Yes.
Sure.
So I do, yes.
Okay.
Do.
Okay. So I guess the question then becomes, if the schools disagree, are we going to take the lowest of the two?
That's up to council.
Okay. Fair.
The lowest reduction or the lowest prepayment?
The lowest reduction. Meaning the greatest reduction, I guess.
Yeah.
You mean the lowest prepayment? Okay.
Right. Sorry.
Doesn't Wilson usually drive that bus?
Well, they're 85% of the budget, so yeah, you would think so.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I guess we're on to the next topic.
All right. What I've done is take the request list that we utilized when we were budgeting in the fall. I eliminated all the items that were not part of the approved budget and reported the status as to what has already been ordered or paid and where we have an opportunity to either delay or cut spending.
Okay. And thank you, Phyllis. And Jim Babb, you're on the call?
I am.
Okay. Jim McCarthy's on the call?
I am.
All right. So obviously we got to look at some of this. I know we had some things that were purchased, a large truck. Phyllis, you sent me that email. I forget what else there was.
Yeah, I have them indicated whether they're ordered and paid. So if
Okay.
you can just go down by department, you'll hit everything.
All right.
One small item on there that I failed to note, Phyllis, with is that treehouse garage doors. Those have already been installed and paid also.
Okay. That was the $5,000 right at the bottom. Okay. So
Okay.
starting in the general fund, we're paying our monthly payment to the library for support. There's been no large outlay for their boiler or electrical, but there's ongoing maintenance related to that. So I'm not quite sure what the status is of that. Jim, can you weigh in?
They continue to have intermittent heating problems. Obviously, winter's over. We're not going to have an urgent issue, but with that $40,000 budget, I think it'd be prudent to do something before the fall season. We have a couple of options there that in one of the committees we spoke about, the options. The least expensive one is just putting a new burner on the existing boiler. If I'm remembering correctly, it was $6,000 or $7,000. So I'm not saying we'd have to spend the whole 40, but we need to do something, and the least expensive something is to replace the actual gas burner on the existing boiler.
Okay. I do have one question for the general good, though, before we start this, because I know everybody's going to have their opinions on what we should cut and recommend to cut. We can only recommend as the finance committee to infrastructure, correct? Or do we have the final say of what gets, if anything, technically, I guess, would get cut?
I think what we're going to do is probably make a recommendation to infrastructure.
Okay.
Steve.
But Steve, you have final approval authority. And then, of course, council. It's up to
Yeah.
council.
All right. Okay. Okay. So we make the recommendations on, we know we got a budget hit of 612, whatever that was, $1,000. And we got some expenses in front of us that we know we can probably deal with. So I guess we just start at the top of the list?
Might as well.
Steve, can I make one comment on the Windows project?
Yeah.
Keep in mind, and I'll defer to Chris and Bethany on this, we are already under a signed contract, and that work was parted out in 2 phases. Phase 2 is on hold due to the situation that we're in now, and also under the governor's order that the contractor cannot work. But I don't know whether this project can be held or whether it can be delayed due to that contract. And Chris and Bethany, I'll defer to you on that.
We would need to have a conversation with the contractor if council wishes to delay that project. I don't think cancellation is an option at this point because we do have a signed contract, but we could have a conversation about delay.
Okay.
Well, I'm on the finance committee and the council. I think we should have that conversation.
I just have a general question about construction in general. So our project is on hold basically because of the COVID-19 situation, the governor shutting down construction companies. Are just large companies shut down, or are the small individual mom and pop shop guys shut down?
Everybody is shut down. The only work that's permitted, there are 3 categories. There's emergency repairs, there's medical facility construction, and there are individual projects for which a waiver has been granted by the state government to a specific project. Those are the 3 categories of work that can proceed. If you don't fall within one of those 3 categories, you can't work.
So if you see all these little guys, these little construction guys, sole proprietorships parked outside people's houses, seeing doing work, they really shouldn't be doing that, I guess.
Well, if it's an emergency repair,
Yeah.
so
Be deemed, I mean, it's up to the definition.
Right, exactly.
Greg, this is Michelle. I have talked to 1 or 2 contractors about emergency repair work. typically what happens, they call in, I have a conversation with Craft Codes and the contractor that we make a determination whether or not it constitutes an emergency repair. I know we issued a permit for a sewer line replacement. I talked to a roofer yesterday who needed to do a repair to a woman's roof because she had water leaking into her bedroom. So there are some, a very small number, but there are some projects that, you know, under the governor's mandate, we do still have to allow to continue moving forward.
I'm just curious. I mean, I guess plumbing would be part of that also. It's like, you know, if all your water doesn't work or you can't, you know, your toilet doesn't, you gotta get somebody to fix that, and that's allowed, I suppose.
That's right.
Typically anything that would be like a structural issue. So, you know, if a car went into a house and there's, you know, structural damage, anything to keep the property weather tight, watertight, or anything that impacts one of the main mechanical, electrical, or plumbing systems of the property.
All right, good enough. Thank you.
When were the windows scheduled to be completed?
They were supposed to start April 1st and complete just in the fall. I would say September, October.
Which would mean that the contractor very likely has the actual windows. They may have already purchased the product.
No, we're reusing the existing windows. It's
Okay.
labor.
Well, that's a good thing. I think we definitely should be discussing delaying the contract.
I wouldn't suspect, I think I'm just saying with the corona and people getting back to work, if they say June, contractors can get back to work, I'm going to assume at this point that window is too late and they could not finish in time before winter set in. That would be my best guess, because it is a 3 to 4 month process.
So why don't we have a conversation with the contractor to say, hey, if we're not getting back till June, you're not going to be able to do it. Let's delay it at least till 2021.
That would be ideal.
Okay. Well, then I guess we can't do anything about it, but we can try to have that conversation. Is that fair?
Yes. So my sense is the committee wants us to seek a 1-year delay on that project. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, there when Powder was in the other week when he was in, wasn't there multiple contractors involved with this project also? It wasn't just the window guy, right?
Well, there's subs. There's one general contractor and he has subs.
But there were segments of the project, not just the, and maybe, you know, just a comment coming into this thing late, maybe it shouldn't be called Borough Hall Window Project since everybody's focused on it's just windows. Maybe it should be Borough Hall Renovation Project or something, just to change the mindset of $1 million being spent on windows.
You sound like a salesman, Keith.
I just look at that and I've had the same feeling everybody else does, is why are you spending $1 million on windows when it's really a lot more than windows from what it sounds like.
Fair.
It's roofing, it's some masonry work, and some windows. So yes, it's exterior work.
Okay. Well, let's have that conversation.
Okay.
Fair. As far as I'm concerned, moving on, if you look down the list, and I guess, do we just want to go down this list? Is everybody in agreement to go down this yellow list?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. It's my humble opinion with what Western Berks is probably going through right now that we need to make that contribution.
Do we want to make it at this time to help them, or should we do our usual schedule and pay it in the fall?
Yeah. Quite frankly, I think we should pay it now.
Okay.
Do it.
I'd be in favor of that.
Yep.
I will contact them to get a invoice and make that payment as soon as possible then.
Is there anybody in disagreement with that?
No.
No.
Okay, moving on. The marked SUV Chevy Tahoe for $46,500. I assume neither Jeff or Tom are on the call.
They are not. What I've been informed is that the one car is ordered and is not yet in. The other car has not yet been ordered.
Well,
Cancel.
doesn't sound like it's going to be ordered. It's the way I would look at it. Unless,
Yes.
Bill Jenks,
Yes, I'm here.
is it something that we can live without for another year?
I see no reason why not. As far as I know, Ford is the only one that changed their whole construction. That's why we had to redo the Ford last year. I haven't heard that Chevy has done anything that's going to change how we put our equipment in installation.
Okay.
Steve, perhaps Pat can check with Chief to see if he feels there's an immediate need, and if there is, we can revisit it.
Yep. But let's make sure it's a real immediate need, not just an immediate need because we like it.
I can evaluate that, Steve, and I'll get back with you.
Okay. All right. I don't know that this committee is able to talk about the two hires.
Well,
Let's discuss that in executive session. That would be an executive session topic.
Good point. Okay. All right, moving on. The HVAC system, I mean, at the firehouse, Pat, can you?
Yes, they have continuing problems going back and forth for HVAC and maintenance and repair. We do have a new contractor on board for our preventive maintenance. But all three of these, the gym and the HVAC and the relocate the date room, they all kind of go into each other as far as safety measures to improve the station. We talked about that when we decided not to do when we did the fire station assessment. I think that all of them can be delayed into the winter months.
I agree with Pat.
Delayed into 2021 winter months?
I don't see why not.
I mean, the gym's up and running now. You know, we have issues ongoing with HVAC. We just get it, repaired. Day room doesn't have to be relocated. Again, I go along with Pat and we just hold everything till next year.
Steve, can I suggest that when you're going through this list, there are certain things you may want to say and recommend to council. We think this should be suspended for sure until next year. And maybe there are some things on here like the HVAC and things like that that you want to recommend to council in a second category. Let's just put them on hold for now and revisit them as the year progresses until we know a little better how this whole thing's going to turn out. It may you may come down to September, October, and you'd say, hey, look, it wasn't as bad as we thought. Things came back. Let's, maybe put in two categories: on hold till next year and on hold till later discussion for this year.
I like that because I don't like making definite decisions now when so much is up in the air.
Hey, Keith, that's why we hired you.
I get the big bucks.
All right. Well, then, that being said, we know Western Berks, we've already agreed to pay. The Chevy Tahoe, I think that's one of those categories we could just put it off till next year, assuming it's not an immediate need.
So you just put a hold on that.
Okay. So we're putting a hold on the Chevy Tahoe and all the fire equipment in that HVAC gym and the relocation. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Okay. Does someone have a calculator nearby to keep adding up all these numbers?
Well, are any of them definite?
No.
Oh, you're right. But we're not going to spend any money on for example, we're not going to spend any money anytime soon on the Chevy Tahoe of 46.5. It hasn't been ordered. Maybe, like he said, we get better in September, October. Now maybe that 46.5 turns into 44.5 because they can't get rid of cars, and we buy it.
Yeah, because some of these things like that, they can be ordered anytime. As you go down into your projects, you're going to be mandated by either by a contract or bids or by seasonality of whether you can complete the project this year. those are the ones that I think you're going to look at and say, those you're definitely going to hold till next year.
So what are we talking? So far, we're talking the 46.5 and all three fire categories. Is that what
Right.
you're saying?
That totals
All right.
74,000.
Yeah, 74,000.
Do we have a target? Are we trying to get to a number? Do we have any idea of?
Well, $613,000 would be a good start.
Yeah,
Well, that's just the mercantile tax. What about?
I said it's a good start.
Where else? What have we done any estimates on what else we might see as reductions, or where we might see reductions?
Well,
all our local tax
transfer tax.
revenues will be off. For the first quarter, the other tax revenues, which include the LST, the real estate transfer tax, for the first quarter, they're down about 70,000.
But keeping in mind that we already have a budget deficit for the year, which is how
Yeah,
much?
that's keeping that right in mind.
How much is that? What's our projected budget before any of this started? What's our projected budget deficit?
$1 million.
Right. So I guess the answer is as much as we can possibly.
Yeah, as much as we can swallow.
Yeah, I just get the pencil out and start striking lines through these things and not be debating it too much.
Yeah. I mean, the real estate taxes are going to be another issue.
They're not
with
going to be
the-
collectible.
Well, my understanding, based on the latest information from the senator's office, is that the discount period will remain April 30th. And there will be a number of residents as well as commercial who will pay their taxes in order to claim that discount. But after that, the flat period is going to be pushed out from the end of June to potentially the end of the calendar year. So we'll get the taxes, or they'll, be turned over to the county and leaned and so forth. But the timing of which we're not going to have the tax revenue.
Cash flow.
Yeah. And there's no penalty. So we'll lose over $12,000 in penalty revenue that we had anticipated.
We're going to have to authorize borrowing and transferring from some of the other fund balances, because we're going to blow right through the general fund reserve.
Potentially, yes.
Based on those comments, I'm not sure how you can approve anything that's not an emergency.
Exactly. You got to go through all the public
I was
works.
actually thinking the same thing. Let's figure out which ones are just the emergency, and then
I
say
can't
which
see-
ones we're allowed to spend money on.
On my screen, I can't see anything below. I can't see the bottom third of that page, so I don't know what else is down there.
Melissa, can you scroll down a little bit? Right there.
Yeah.
So I guess
Anything that's not awarded or under contract, that's not an emergency, needs to be removed and delivered.
or at least put on hold.
Yeah.
And I guess also the question needs to be is, are any of these projects required to be done because of either a grant or matching funds that have already been awarded that have to be completed within a certain period of time? So what's our risk of losing dollars coming elsewhere that are being matched, that if we don't do the project, we could potentially lose?
Phyllis, you have that list?
Well, if we start at the top of the public works list, the 4th Street development in Wyomissing is there, and I believe Michelle is on the call to comment about that.
So I talked to Colleen Terry and Kathy Bruder, our lobbyist and our grant writer, earlier this week. We have 3 years automatically under the grant to do the project, and we could request 2 additional 1-year time extensions. I strongly recommend against doing that. Drexel University College of Medicine is one of the projects that received a waiver from Governor Wolf's office. They resumed construction last week. In every conversation we've had with Equus, they made it very clear that 4th Street needs to be done in time for the first class of students, which is August of 2021. We are under a very tight time frame to get 4th Street done in conjunction with when the school opens. Also, from an economic development standpoint, this is the one project we can facilitate continuing that could potentially have an economic development benefit on the other side for the borough.
So obviously the big concern is we continue with the 4th Street project and the state doesn't come up with their grant.
PennDOT has not announced, so there's been no talk of rating any of the pots of funds for grant awards that were issued in 2019. So do we need to worry about DCED coming back and saying, hey, we're taking that $2 million back? I'd say that's very unlikely. PennDOT has still not announced their grant recipients. They were supposed to do that in March, and obviously the governor was sidetracked by COVID-19. Kathy has been trying to update me every other day if she's heard anything, and she hasn't. But she said, you know, stay the course, that she expects that money will still be there for them to award. The money that the governor's using for the economic stimulus packages is not coming from any grant program. So it's not from DCNR, it's not from DCED, it's not from PennDOT. It's coming from discretionary funds he has at his disposal to use how he chooses. So she does not see any impact to 2019 or 2020 grant programs.
So that means we need to, and John, you're on the call, right? John Woodward? Bueller? Okay. 4th Street is important. 4th Street's a big number. 4th Street scares the crap out of me, excuse my language, because I know we haven't heard anything about the $2 million being dried up, but we start this project and all of a sudden we're going to be borrowing that money from VIST to finish that $2 million, which we talked about, but that was with a very, very short-term horizon. It scares me, but I also think we're kind of to keep the economic development moving over there, and to do that, I don't know I don't know how we can't continue with the project if we think that the grants are still going to be in order. But I am not able to sleep well at night when I think about that either.
Steve,
Well,
can I make a suggestion for you, Steve? This is Pat.
Sure, you can make a suggestion, yeah.
One of the things that you can do to attempt to, you know, get some more time from, and probably some more time from the state as far as whether there ain't grant funding, you can always put the project out for bid, see what the final numbers are going to be, and make those decisions when the bids come back in. You can always reject the bids for the project and put the project on hold at that time.
And when were we planning on starting this $537,000 project?
June.
No.
That's different.
Oh,
Yep.
sorry.
Oh, that's a different number?
Yeah.
That's the local borough street work.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
So this is a zero number. There is no number in there because it's grant reserves or debt. Got it. Okay.
Right. And Steve, just so everyone's aware, on the 4th Street project, at this point, up until we open bids, Equus has been reimbursing the borough for all the costs. So per that agreement we have with them, so there's no cost expenditure of the borough to put this out to bid.
Okay.
In fact, we're planning on putting this out to bid next Friday.
Okay. My apologies. I misread that, and they've had this in my hands for a couple of days.
No problem. But I wasn't sure if everyone was aware that Equus's portion of the project they agreed to was to pre-fund all the soft costs getting to the bid opening.
Okay. So then just my one person's recommendation is to move forward, see where we stand, and we'll go over there. That may buy us some time for this pandemic to go fly bye-bye, and make sure that we're going to get the grants awarded to us.
Well, another thing that you might want to keep in mind, and I don't know if this gives you any comfort, Steve, but the medical school project was granted a waiver, and that is an exceptional action by the state government. The governor's office supported that, and that means to me that this continues to be a priority for state government, and that gives me at least some feeling that we should anticipate that the state government will follow through on their grant commitment to the project.
Steve, if it makes you feel better as well, I can talk to Kathy about setting up a call with Representative Gillen and Senator Schwenk and some of the higher ups at DCED and potentially PennDOT about maybe getting something, even just an email from them reiterating their commitment to us for the grant funding.
I would love that.
Okay, I'll work on that.
Okay. All right.
But there is a certain element of the 4th Street project that will be paid by the borough from reserves. Is that correct?
It's a grant reimbursement program, so we pay the cost up front and then get reimbursed through the grant programs on the back end.
At 100%.
At 100%
It's
on
100%,
DCED,
yeah.
70% on PennDOT. That 30% is being split between Equus and the borough.
And what's the borough's liability potentially?
500,000 max.
Well, we don't know if PennDOT's going to award that portion yet, so it could be much larger.
Correct, if the grant's not awarded.
Correct, but from everything I've heard to date, there's no indication they're not going to award it. The awards were apparently sitting on the governor's desk for him to sign off on when COVID-19 hit.
Okay. All right. So my vote is to move forward with the bids, Jim. And if anything, it buys us a little bit of time to get something from the state legislature, Michelle, and maybe we'll find something new about the PennDOT in the meantime. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah.
And with the timing on this, just so everyone's aware, what we were putting the bids out for, this wouldn't come in front of council till the June council meeting. So there's, we have some time.
So as far as 4th Street goes, we'll just move forward as though business as usual, if you will. I mean, I was nervous about the PennDOT grant before all this crap happened. So.
Okay, that being the case, then I believe Chris has ordinance ready for the next council meeting to approve that debt.
Are you talking about the VIST?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
That is being advertised for consideration of enactment at Tuesday's council meeting.
And we don't have to do anything for that here, right?
No, I think it was already recommended by the committee to go forward with the VIST transaction.
Okay. Moving forward, Jim Babb, street work. Is there anything that is of emergency purposes in that $537,000?
No, nothing's of emergency. But as the public works manager, I just if we delete 537,000, it's just a step back in the long run. But I surely understand the situation we're in. But there's nothing that's an emergency. No.
All right. So when I look down the list a little bit, Jim, just to get ahead of myself, I see the park trails of 46.5, and I see the Happy Hollow steps. So when I think of the Happy Hollow steps, I had all the intentions of walking there yesterday with my dog, and I just realized that's too far away, so I didn't do it. How bad are the steps? Because if they're bad, I think we got to do them anyway. Because the last thing we need is someone to fall down those steps.
Honestly, I don't know if 25 grand will cover what needs to be done. But any loose or missing bricks, I mean, we can patch those together in-house. Again, it's not an emergency.
Is there anything, Jim? Well, it's a different topic. Okay. So I think we should just go with the Happy Hollow steps for the emergency repairs only. So we'd be saving a good portion of that at this point.
Steve, this is Pat. Can I make a recommendation on your street work?
Yeah.
On Jim McCarthy's memo, he has basically a list of recommendations. My recommendation for the street work, and this is because the quarries are closed and everything else is going on with this pandemic, is to reject the bids at the next council meeting and push the project to 2021 for all street work.
Okay. Well, back to what Keith, I believe, said earlier is we come out of this thing. I guess when's the last day we do the street work? Calendar wise, Jim, well, either of you, Jim.
October 31st, they have to be done paving.
So the only thing is, if we're assuming the worst case scenario and it comes in as a better scenario, not a great scenario, maybe we get some deals for a significantly lower cost. But the reason I skipped from the street work down to down to those steps is just, I'm trying to figure out what is done, what is an emergency in that street work and what is not. I'd love to be able to postpone the whole thing based on a number, Jim Bab, of 537, 250. But I'm in the group of saying, let's push it all off and not send any bids out yet until this thing is cleared up. And then maybe we make a decision later then in 2 months that we're not going to do it at all. Or
well, here's the thing. The council has to award or reject the bids at Tuesday's meeting, or we already have the bids. So we have to either reject them or accept them. And if we wanted to push it down the road, we'd have to either rebid it this year or rebid it next year.
Okay.
The street work is the only capital project that's been put out to bid so far. That's the only one.
Just out of curiosity, how did it come in compared to budget?
High.
It came in high because of the curb. Curb came in extremely high.
The total budget, what you're seeing here it says street work 537,000. One of those streets, Cherrywood, was out of the water fund, so that as opposed to the general fund.
Right.
The total budget, both funds combined, was 650,000, and the bid price was 794,000, mostly, but not totally, due to really high curb prices.
That bid included the trail work too.
Yes.
Yes, and that included that part 46 for the park trail.
How bad is the park trail? And I don't even know where that is.
From
Wyomissing Boulevard to the museum on the Parkside Drive north side of the creek.
Say that again.
Wyomissing Boulevard.
Yep.
Heading east towards the museum.
Oh, you just lost them.
Yep, I got it.
Towards Reading.
Yeah, I got it. Towards the real museum. Got it.
And it's on the north side of the creek, the Parkside Drive north side of the creek, not the Parkside Drive south portion of the creek.
Based on having to either award or reject them based on by next Tuesday, I would think Pat's recommendation is correct, and you need to reject them on Tuesday and then revisit them later.
Yeah, if I could add, just from a strategic point of view, the last time we had a recession, 12 years ago, we got very good pricing for a while because contractors were scraping for work. Now, I don't want to be, self-serving for the borough in this, but I think rejecting the bids, and then if your finances look okay later on and you rebid, there could be an improvement in the pricing.
Okay. So I think we have an agreement now that we're just we're gonna make I don't even know if we have to make a recommendation to council, but we're not gonna accept that bid more than likely at council.
Right.
Okay.
I think that makes sense.
All right, stormwater improvements.
That one's pretty simple. There's 100,000 of that culvert replacement behind Dr. Sweet's off of Reading Boulevard that we're not going to get a permit in time anyway. That was 100,000 of that. The other 70,000 was some improvements over there in Hills at East Park Road and Wyomissing Hills Boulevard to help some of those flooding issues. So it's really that 170 is those two projects combined.
Right. And has that been bidded out yet?
No.
I guess we got to wait on that then too. Although I do feel bad for the people over Wyomissing Hills Boulevard. If it's something that we could remediate, but if we can wait to at least make that decision, so be it. Everybody in agreement?
For that 53 and 55 East Park at the very bottom of the hill, flooding in their backyards more or less and into their basements. We had discussed it in the past, but
yeah. Well, again, I feel bad for them, but we're in unprecedented times, so I think we just hold that bid for now.
the 50/50 sidewalk program, the application period is done at the end of April. As of now, we only have like 11 applicants. and we usually end up with 25 or 30.
Right.
So I don't know how many more we'll get, but the participation rate seems really low right now.
And so that means we would have a net effect because the max we pay out is $1,000, correct?
Correct.
So right now we're on hook for 11,000 of that 46,250.
Has that been advertised for this year? I haven't seen anything.
It's on the website and it was in the newsletter. You know, you have to look for it, but it's out there.
Well, that one directly affects, quite frankly, directly affects some of our, I don't know. I have a hard time saying we should can that when it's already been advertised and it's benefiting employees, our taxpayers. The question is how many of those 11 people, now that this has happened, will turn around and say, I don't really want to do it now. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Usually, people who have applied, in the end, 99% participate.
Right.
I don't know if that changes here or not.
And wasn't this going to be the last year for that?
Yeah. So.
Well, the other flip side of the coin is maybe the committee can say that we'll send a notice out that we've disbanded that. We will continue it for another year, and the people who already applied would not have to reapply.
As a guest, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, I think so too.
And Max, was it filled up already?
We had 11 people.
Oh.
All right. So then I think we table that for next year, send out the notices to the 11 people due to the issues that we got. We're postponing it for 2020 to 2021. Is that a fair state? Or do we want to do that again, make it postpone it to later in the year?
Well, the reality is any project that you say you're putting off till next year, if everything looks sweet in 6 months, you can always bring it back.
Okay, then let's go that direction. If it looks better by end of the year, we may continue with it. If not, we will redo the 50/50 sidewalk program for 2021, which I assume would need council's approval. But we can get that moving forward. All right, we already got a dump truck. We got the chipper. The treehouse garage doors are done, and the small trench safety box. Okay, great. We've discussed the steps. Can we get by with some kind of small remediation on the trail over there near Brandon Lynch's house? If I'm in the right spot.
Yeah, I'll have to look at it in detail. It's one of those things that could probably just wait till we do it. But I'll surely look at it to see if there's any real hazards, but I don't know as there is.
Yeah, I get my concern, this whole thing, and why I talk about the steps is I know we want to remediate, or we want to eliminate as much or push back as much of these expenses as we can, but I also don't want to take something that's an emergency situation and not take care of it when we know we should. So
there's a lot of traffic on that trail.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of use of the trails right now.
Those trails are packed right now, especially that the north side of the creek between the museum and Stonehouse. I mean, that thing is just like a highway.
Yeah.
Bicycles and children and moms with strollers. It's something that if we have patchwork to do, we ought to do it before something happens and we end up.
Agreed. Yeah, I agree. I mean, so Jim, why don't you take a zing through there and see what happens and see what we can do for not the 46.5.
All right.
Next, the pool vacuum. I don't know if if you don't pay, I don't know if we need it or not. I don't know I don't know what the stance of the old one. I don't know where we are with the old one. If it can work, great, then we'll just use the old one. But if you don't have a pool vacuum at all, it'll probably cost you, and the pool opens, that's a big key. You'll probably end up spending more than $2,500 in manual labor vacuuming the pool than having the real vacuum, I assume.
Yeah, I guess that one, when I see Rob, I don't know the condition of it. I'll just ask Rob, you know, if the other one is broke or we really need it, to purchase it. If it can wait another year, to delay it. I just don't know the condition of the existing one.
Okay. Fair enough. All right. And then are we going to fall in the same boat for these next categories? Obviously, the partially paid piece, I assume we're going to have to owe the other balance of that.
What that is we've already purchased the meters, but there's a second phase where we have a contractor to install them. So we've already bought and paid for the meters. We haven't bought and paid for the installation. That was supposed to happen this month. It's been delayed. So my thought there is to, let's see what June looks like and proceed with the installation, because we've already purchased the meters, which was the bulk of that 125,000.
Okay. All right. So we can continue with that portion of the project. The rest of those, I think we're going to, if it's at all possible, the Monroe Avenue, the Cherrywood. Sorry about the people who live on Monroe. Cherrywood. How about the fire hydrants? Is that something, when I read that before, that concerned me, as that may be something that we need to do for the safety?
We try to keep an inventory at the garage, so as fire hydrants fail or hit, that we have an inventory. We have 2 or 3 over there. I guess what I'd like to say is, could we leave that kind of open-ended, and if I get in a jam, I'm going to have to buy a few, but I surely won't pre-purchase 10 of them just for inventory.
Yeah. Well,
how many do you use in a year, Jim?
It varies, not a lot. I would say on average 5, 6. We have 2 in inventory. I think it's 2 in inventory now.
Well, then I'm in favor. I mean, obviously, if fire hydrant goes bad, we got to replace it. So let's not order 10 just to have 10.
Right.
Jim,
You want to say 5, half of that?
Yeah, I think if you cut that in half, that'd be good. And then obviously that would give us 7. Should cover us for the year. But if we need an emergency one, we'll go out and buy it.
Hey, Jim, back to the meter reading equipment, just for, as Chris is calculating here, what portion of that 125 is the installation versus the purchase of the meters?
Around 30, just over 30,000 is the installation.
So we could add 30,000 to the emergency if we need to.
Yeah.
Okay. Cherrywood road paving. Obviously, if we're not going to do the other stuff, we won't be doing the road paving. That's all part of the bid, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Woodland valve, is that something that's an emergency?
It's one of those things you never know. We have a pressure reducing valve on Woodland Road. It's been in place for, I think, 11 years. The only maintenance you do on them, there's a big rubber diaphragm in this valve, and it was just some preventative maintenance to replace that big diaphragm in this valve. It can, 90% sure it can wait, but you never know. It's preventative maintenance.
Then
Jim, is that valve that's custom made that you had talked about a while back, that for the pump?
No, that's a pump. That is a pump.
Oh, that is the pump. Okay.
Yeah. No, this is totally unrelated.
So that diaphragm, I think, as you put it, if something happened, we could get it in a day or 2?
No. It's a process. It's a process.
And if it goes bad and we don't have one in store, what happens?
We would have to feed water from another zone for 3 or 4 days, a week, until we got it. Supplying the commercial area in Berkshire Heights with lower water pressure, because we're feeding from a different direction, if you will.
All right. That scares me in itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talking about
Jim McCarthy, your thoughts? I think we go forward with that then.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you don't want to we don't want to have God forbid, have a fire in that area when we're delivering them lower than normal pressure and their fire suppression systems don't work.
Yeah, that's what I was worried about, not the water fountains. Right.
Yeah, I'm not worried about people having a drink. I'm worried about people dying in a fire.
Right. All right. So my personal recommendation is to move forward with the woodland valve then.
All right.
That's prudent.
How about oh, you did that already. What's the meter pit on Woodland Road? I guess if you need a lid.
Yeah, that was the one that's there is an old cast iron lid that's hard to open, hard to get it seated back closed.
Do we put that, do our guys put that on?
Yeah, we would purchase it and put it on. Yeah, we would purchase it, put it on. We would put it on, but we'd have to purchase it.
Okay. My deal, I just go ahead and do that one. That's minor anyway. Anybody else's thought?
Oh, I think you need to.
Yeah.
That emergency pump's not on here, I guess, for the sewer line.
No, that was approved by council, and that's I ordered it, but that's a 2-3 month process. So it's been ordered. It was less than, I think we had approved up to 25,000. It was 20,000. But that's in process, and it's not on Phyllis's breakdown here because it was the way it happened.
We probably should just add it when you give it to council, just so they can see where the expenditures are going.
Okay. And then the sewer fund, where do we stand with that?
We haven't bid anything.
Yeah, right. It was
again,
set to go out next week.
Everything with our capital sewer repairs is all preventative maintenance. That's what it is.
Right.
It would just like the street work. It would just set us back, time wise.
I get it, but we're all being set back time wise.
Yep.
Is that the sort of work that the state government would let us do anyway?
Well, yeah.
One other thing to add too, when you were talking about grants earlier, we did apply for 2 small grants, a water grant and a sewer grant. We were successful in getting them a few years back. Delaying anything into 2021 won't rise those grants if we get them. So.
Okay.
So yeah, the sewer thing, if we wanted to just not bid that and delay it till next year, would be okay.
Yep.
Then that would be my recommendation. Anybody else? Anybody else's opinion?
I agree.
So of the 320,000, are we putting that entire amount on hold, or Jim, is there a piece of that that you think will be absolutely necessary?
No, I think you can take that
the whole thing.
Then let's do it. Hey, what's the worst case scenario? We end up with a budget surplus, right? And do some extra work next year.
Right. And then I just made notes here on all these from my end, because a bunch of these we had scheduled to go out to bid in the next 2 weeks. We're just going to cancel that, stop where we are on them today.
Yep.
Okay. I mean, I know council needs to formally act on that, but I just want to make sure everyone knew that's what I was going to do. There's no sense spending any money if we're not going to bid it this year and then we haven't spent.
Okay.
All right.
Anything else for the budget items?
Steve, and I guess this is for Jim also. The items that are under contract, such as the dump truck and the chipper, when are those going to have to be paid?
Oh,
Chipper, we last I heard that we'll be taking.
Having a meeting there, and I saw your number. And I thought,
Weeks, next 2 weeks, and it'll be.
No.
Okay.
March. We won't take delivery until August, September. So that won't come due till the fall.
Okay, well, that's a good thing.
Chris, what was the total then you came up with when we were adding them up as you went along?
I wasn't running a
I
total.
did. I
Oh.
ran a total.
Sorry.
I came up with 1,490,000.
18.
Yay, bingo.
I mean, it's no good. It's not a good thing, but I think at this point we don't know what we're dealt with, and it leads me to another question, Phyllis. And you probably have told us this in the past, and I apologize. But what percent of our real estate taxes do you think we generally have gotten in the 2% range, where they get the 2% savings?
Steve, I'll have to check on that. I just deposited 2 more checks this week. And they're going to continue to pay the discount for all that can afford it cash flow wise.
Right.
So I will have better information, at the end of the month, but I'll get you a to-date figure, and I'll email everybody.
And if you don't mind, just say, hey, this is what we collected in 2019 in the discount period. This is where we are year to date. I think that'd be good for everybody's knowledge.
Okay. At the end of March, we were behind last year's collection by 170,000.
Okay. There's no discount paying at the end of March, right? It's only the end of April.
No, it's an open period till the end of April.
Okay. What do we have in front of us there?
You and I discussed the decrease in assessed value for the Park Road Plaza Group.
Yeah, how about this is fun for everybody's knowledge. Go ahead.
Melissa, could you scroll down just a little bit further? Okay, when we budgeted in the fall, the total assessed value of all the properties in the borough was $1,021,000,000. When the tax bills were printed in January, that increased slightly to $1,023,000,000. So that was all the bills that went out. We were informed just on Friday, I received a notice from the assessment office that an additional property in the Wilson Commercial District was reassessed downward by over $1 million. So while we're optimistic about all the economic development, I just want everyone to keep in mind that the Wilson area continues to apply and are approved decreases in their assessed values. So that one property, the resulting tax loss is over $4,000.
Okay.
So as we're gaining with the economic development, we're losing with reassessments.
Hopefully that's not the start of any to come.
Well, we were hit hard last year with the Berkshire Mall and surrounding areas. Right at the end of the year, Walmart complex, that was downward, I think about 400,000 if I recall correctly. This is the first one received in the current year.
This is why the economic development activities are so important, though, because of the evolving retail economy.
Yep. Okay. Do we need to go into executive session to talk about the police? Or is that something that is done elsewhere?
Steve, yeah, we do need to go into executive session for some of these topics. And before we do so, I understand that there has been a Sunshine Act complaint or objection made by members of the public in attendance, Mr. Jadick. Therefore, just for the record, I'd like to go through and match up the video participants with the phone numbers that are at the bottom of the screen and are unidentified. And also note who is a member of the committee as we go through here and who is not.
Yeah, and respectfully, I think, we're sort of feeling our way with these remote meetings. And I do think it's a good idea to have a procedure that when we initiate meetings going forward, at the beginning of the meeting, we identify everybody who's participating so we have a record.
Okay.
Melissa, can you do a roll call again of the members of the committee and then everyone else who is participating and match it up for the minutes with the phone numbers that are unidentified, as well as everybody's full name?
Sure.
Thank you.
For the members, we have Keith Durr.
Yes, I'm here, and my machine, since it's one of my wife's apples, says Tyra Durr, but this is me.
Okay. Tom Mull.
Here.
Paul Brass.
Here.
John Gallen Jr.
Here.
Stephen Brunner.
Here.
Gregory Portner.
Here.
Okay. And
just for clarity, Mr. Portner, you are also identified by a phone number as well on the screen. Is that correct?
I am. I don't know. I can't see it.
Okay, looks like you're a phone number ending in 0557 as well as a video feed of G. Portner.
Yeah, that's, I'm on instead of video through the computer, I'm on my phone at the office.
Okay, thank you.
Now, I will not be able to participate in the executive session. Steve, I have one of your coworkers coming in shortly. I have to get ready for that. So,
okay. Fair enough. Moving on.
Are there any other unidentified participants?
the only other phone number I have is ending in 6874.
And that's muted. We don't know who that is.
I'm not sure who it is.
6874.
Okay, the other number I see.
Hello? Yeah, 6874. Can you identify yourself?
John Woodward.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Thank you, John.
Looking up.
And I'm going to leave the call when you go into executive session.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, and the other number appears to be the borough number. Is that correct? The 7481?
Correct.
Okay, and is that for recording purposes?
That's probably that's probably me because I'm on my borough phones on the landline.
Okay, so Jim Babb, you have a video feed that's not active as well as the landline through the borough hall.
Correct.
Okay. And Jim's
Jim's iPad's Jim McCarthy.
Thanks, Jim.
Yep.
Did I show up on there?
Yes, you're T. Boucher.
Yep, okay.
All right, I think everyone else is. Do you have a record of everyone, Melissa, who's on the call?
I do, yes.
Thank you.
Sorry, new world for all of us. Okay, so do we break now and go into executive session? And
Yeah, now, are we going to come back into public session? And if so, we need to announce right now at what time on the clock we will be resuming a public meeting.
Bethany?
Should we, do you think 15 minutes is enough or?
Go ahead.
I would think, 15, does anybody have a hard stop this morning at a certain time? I mean, do you want to just say, I would say 9:50, give us 5 minutes extra?
I'm okay with 9:50. I have a pretty hard stop at 10 o'clock myself.
Okay.
I must go now. Won't be able to join again in the other meeting.
Okay, well, we'll try to keep it brief. I would say 9:50 though.
Okay, so we're going to come back into public session at 9:50 at the same contact information. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
I'm not going to go back on later. You don't
All
need me to
brass,
Steve?
No, you're
all
good.
brass will not come back on.
I'll leave that.
Okay, well, we should identify everyone when we get back into the next public session part.
Yep, fair enough.
Okay. Thank you.
Sunt într-un meeting la Boro. Da. Vin imediat acum, vezi că începe meeting-ul din nou.
Hello, at all.
Hi, Steve.
Steve, I would like you to know that I went back in here without calling my wife in to help me.
And you changed your name.
And I also changed my name without my wife coming in here to help me.
You do know there's a way to put a background in too, like you can be in Tahiti if you wanted to be.
I don't know. I thought maybe somebody would comment because I'm in my den with the deer heads hanging on the wall. I thought maybe somebody would do that.
Only if you're shot.
I tried to angle it from my desk so you'd only see one as opposed to multiples.
As long as you didn't get them in the parkland, we're good.
Not yet. We haven't come to that yet. But
that was up on Jack Rabbit Hill.
If it gets bad and we need meat, don't rule it out.
We still have 2 minutes yet, so.
It's always high road, Keith.
We've been walking up there and we've seen them.
Can I say something since I don't know. Do you hear me?
We hear you, but I prefer you wait till 9.
No, it's not just private, nothing. What I was just trying to comment, and thank you, Mrs. Emke, for acknowledging I think just discussing about this being able to positive ID people, understand? Everyone would like to go and cook breakfast during this meeting, or go to the bathroom. So the whole purpose of an elected official to be participant here is so we can see him that he actually is there. And of course, I probably you guys don't care. I can, take my video off, but not for officials. And that includes borough officials, Jim Babb, Michelle, most importantly, the financial, what's her name, Phyllis. Obviously, we need to see her face. So we know she's there. And obviously, Mr. John Woodward, he obviously was not there at some point. So anyway, thank you for letting me speak. I'll mute myself now.
Hi, Jody.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Jody.
Hello.
Jody.
Getting emails from the school district.
Are we waiting anybody else?
It's 9:50 and you have a quorum of the Finance Committee members.
Okay. We're now out of executive committee back into the public meeting. Does anybody else have anything for the good of the Finance Committee?
Steve, I do. While you were in executive session, I was able to look into the real estate tax question that you had posed. Our collections year to date versus the same time in 2019. In 2019, a combined general revenue, as well as road tax, which was assessed in 19. Collections were just short of $1 million. They were 996. To date, the current real estate taxes are only 724. So we're approximately 27% behind, and that's including the increase in the tax rate for 2020.
All right, then I guess the next question would be, what of that, how much do we get on April, the end of April, of that 9, how much more did we collect between now and the end of April 19? And you can get that to us later.
Okay, will do.
And because it may be just a matter of people just waiting a little bit longer to write the check to get the 2% savings.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely. Yes.
I mean, quite frankly, many of us on the screen may be one of those people. So, okay. Anything else for the good of the order?
So Steve, so the recommendation then is going to be for all of those projects that we talked about, we're going to have a list of those next week for council to recommend. The finance committee is going to recommend to council that all of those lists with this final dollar amount be either put on hold or suspended for the time being.
Correct.
That's so we're going to have that list to go out to council.
Phyllis, you'll have that list for council meeting, right?
I will have that list complete with dollar amounts.
Okay.
Perfect.
Perfect. And you know, the nice part about this is we'll be able to pick and choose. If something that needs to be taken care of, we can always say, go ahead and do that one.
Yep.
Correct. Yeah, we don't want to put off any emergencies, and we don't want to put off anything that could create an emergency.
Exactly.
But anything that we can do to defer the cost, and let's hope that the revenues are better than we hope, and
yeah,
we'll be able to do some things at the end of the year, and hopefully we get a better deal with some of the contractors. Okay, I thank everybody for their time this morning. I know it was a long meeting, and I know it's unprecedented times, and we did the best we could to accommodate all. Meeting adjourned.
So we're going to do the same. This is how we're going to do the council meeting next week as well.
Correct.
Yep. I assume we'll get invites from Melissa.
Yes, today.
Okay.
Melissa, there'll be a public invite and an executive session invite, I assume.
Correct.
Okay.
And then what's the next scheduled? So the next scheduled meeting is Borough Council on Tuesday. Is there anything after that? What's after that?
The following Tuesday is Park and Rec.
Okay. Okay.
And the council meeting will be early. Council meeting's at 2 p.m.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Infrastructure's on the 20th.
Hold on a second. So the council meeting is next week at the 20th.
20th is infrastructure.
No, the council meeting is at what time?
Council meeting is at 1:30 for executive session, 2 o'clock for public section on
the 14th. Okay.
Melissa, maybe we can just send those emails out sooner rather than later, just so we can start, since there are so many changes, maybe we can just start getting them on the calendar, make sure we're have them.
Sure, we can do that.
So executive session's at 1:30 and then the council meeting's at 2. Okay.
Okay.
So we're adjourned?
We're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Have a good day, everybody.
Bye.
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 Have a good day.
Bye.